Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something most of us have right in our pockets, mobile phones. We've looked at studies covering, well, everything from generational habits to some pretty shocking real-world dangers. And the scale is just huge. Globally, people are spending about 4 hours and 37 minutes on their phones every single day.
Every day.
And checking them, on average, 58 times.
Yeah, the 58 checks number. That's kind of why we're talking about this. Our mission, really, is to use these sources to figure out how this always-on thing is, fundamentally changing our psychology. And maybe more importantly, why it's so hard to just put the phone down. Why self-control often seems to fail against, well, the way these things are designed. Let's maybe start with the generations. We often hear about Gen Y millennials and Gen Z. The data we looked at draws a pretty clear line. Gen Z shows a heavier reliance, and that seems to correlate strongly with higher social anxiety, maybe shorter attention spans. Millennials, well, they had their teens, their early years, sort of before the smartphone took over completely.
Yeah.
So they tend to integrate it maybe a little more balancedly, if that's the word.
Okay, but is it really less reliance for millennials or just different? I mean, Gen Z might be hooked on TikTok, sure. But aren't millennials often just as glued to work stuff? Email, Slack, checking the calendar constantly. Isn't the addiction just wearing a different outfit, maybe?
That's a really good point. It shows how these triggers are just everywhere for all ages. But here's something that really jumped out from the studies. People are terrible at guessing their own usage. When participants tried to estimate how often they picked up their phones, they were consistently way off.
Way off how?
Like underestimating by a factor of 10, sometimes even 20.
Wow. 10 or 20 times. That means it's almost completely unconscious behavior then.
Exactly. It's become a habit we don't even register doing.
How does that happen? How does it get so ingrained?
Well, the sources point pretty clearly to classic conditioning. Think Pavlov's dogs. The notification, that little buzz or ding, that's the cue. The bell. It gets paired over and over with a potential reward. Sometimes it's a like, sometimes it's news, sometimes a funny cat video. It's intermittent, which is key. That pairing gives you a little dopamine hit. And eventually, the sources say just seeing your phone or feeling it vibrate or even noticing it's been quiet for a while, that becomes the trigger.
The trigger for the craving.
Right, the craving and the compulsive check.
And that constant waiting, that anticipation, it takes a toll, doesn't it? The studies mention ring anxiety.
Ringxiety, that phantom vibration thing where you think your phone went off, but it didn't.
I could definitely get that. And wasn't there something about tracking time? Like 79% of people struggle with that when just scrolling for fun.
Yeah, time just sort of melts away. And this constant checking, this vigilance, it translates directly into stress. We saw that 43% of Americans who say they're constant checkers also report higher stress levels overall.
That makes sense. But it's ironic, isn't it, all this connection yet?
Yet 44% of those same constant checkers feel disconnected from their family and friends, even when they're right there with them.
That's the phubbing thing, right? Phone snubbing.
Pretty much. You're physically present, but mentally you're somewhere else entirely, looking at your screen.
And this isn't just about awkward silences at dinner. This distraction, this lack of awareness, it can have lethal consequences. There was that awful maritime accident mentioned in the research back in 2019.
Yeah, that was a stark example.
A third officer on a ferry, he was on the stern ramp talking on his phone, and a semi-trailer was moving up the ramp, and he just didn't see it. Lost situational awareness completely.
A fatal consequence of being distracted by the phone, even in a clearly high-risk situation.
He's chilling.
And it leads to this really interesting paradox when people try to cut back. You turn on Do Not Disturb, you switch off notifications,